CEO Ronald Hicklin from Creating the Difference. Got my man Dustin Zaner here. We're in the Creating the Difference Education Center, and we're giving you another little video about the Storm USBC bowling ball situation. So, Dustin, thank you for joining us, and let's have a good, productive meeting about the FAQ section that USBC brought and published probably about 3 or 4 days ago now.
All right, let's do it.
All right, so basically there's two documents, but the one that we're most interested in is this one here, which is actually the FAQ document. We'll start at the very, very top. And we're not going to go through all of it because, quite honestly, there's a lot of information here that you probably don't care about. But there is some things. They're kind of basically setting up the groundwork for what they do. They're basically saying that they test about 300 bowling balls a year, and the way they do it is designed to keep the cost down. And it's a very intense process, and it takes about, it could take up to 5 hours. And they're looking for, basically the manufacturers to work with them and help them through, the process of making sure that they're doing what they say they're going to do. But it also says that USBC has the ability to spot check, and that they do spot check. And there's a process for that. Like I said, if you're interested, you can go through all of the FAQ section. But the things that we kind of need to know is that, they kind of apologize that it was an unfortunate situation that had occurred during the USBC Open Championships and the Masters. But once they said that once they determined these balls were out of spec, they go, hey, we got to get rid of them. So that's what they did. They go into detail about, the current process to approve a bowling ball. This is kind of interesting, where it says that basically each manufacturer is required to send 2 bowling balls to USBC of a new model. The manufacturer seeks approval. Our equipment specification certification team takes balls through a 13-point inspection process. It takes approximately 5 hours to be able to complete. And I'm a little bit familiar with the process, as I used to work for a ball manufacturer, and I understand that they have a lot of stuff they have to go through in order to be able to get this bowling ball approved. And some of it isn't even necessarily doing the test, Dustin. It's actually them waiting for the test to be able to be completed.
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at this FAQ when it was launched, the thing that stuck out to me most was each manufacturer is required to send 2 bowling balls to USBC. So at least from my point of view, not on that end of it, it sounds like USBC is really relying on the manufacturer to have their processes set up to where those 2 bowling balls are going to be good. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, of course. And also there's some additional things that are kind of good that they don't really go deep diving here. But here's the thing. All of the information for the process is available on bowl.com in their SOP section. So they've got standard operating procedures for all of this stuff, including bowling ball approval. So you can look at every single thing that they go through in order to be able to check it if you're interested in that. But for this purpose, we're just going to kind of hit some of the highlights. So it says, what's the process used for spot checking balls, right? Takes 4 models from different active brands each quarter for verification. 4 samples from each chosen ball are inspected for any specification that was close to the limit at the time of approval. So as an example, if you had a ball that was close to the limit on differential, they're going to grab some of those balls and double check them. If the 4 samples are near the limit, then additional 4 samples are gathered. If the batch of 8 samples predicts non-conformance greater than 0.6% of any bowling ball is found outside of the specification, then 24 additional balls are required and tested to estimate the predicted non-conformance percentage using globally accepted statistical calculation methods for quality assessment. So what that means is that basically, if you have bowling balls that are close to the limit and they check them and they're still close to the limit, then they're going to continue to gather balls until they get a bunch of bowling balls. And then once they get a bunch of bowling balls, they're going to begin to figure out, based on some statistics, how much we would predict the global population of those bowling balls would be, out of spec, so to speak. So now there can be a lot of debate about, the validity of that. But the point of it is, it doesn't really matter whether you believe that's what they should do or not. That's what they do. That's what they've said they were going to do. And all the manufacturers know that's what they do. So that's just how the process works. Whether you agree with it or not is really immaterial at this point. It says, why would USBC, approve a ball and then later remove it? So they're kind of explaining here, the process. It's not like they purposely do that. It's just sometimes this is how this kind of plays out. And they basically say, USBC measures approved samples sent by the manufacturers. They rely on the manufacturers to produce balls that are the same as the ones that they send as samples. Of course, that makes sense, right? USBC can test, but the USBC also can test bowling balls in the marketplace, which is what they've done. Manufacturers have agreed to this process and have been aware of it for years. That is very true. So all the manufacturers know that this can happen and agree to it. So this isn't an opportunity to say, well, USBC picked on somebody or USBC is doing this or doing that. I mean, these are rules that are blatantly written and everybody knows them that is a manufacturer. All right, let's skip on down. See here. What is the importance? What is the equipment specification and certifications manual and why is it important? So that basically is the manual that everybody follows. And it's public information if you want to go look at it. It's on bowl.com. So if you're interested in going into the deep dive, there you go. Let's see here. They talk a little bit about the durometer and how it works and consistency. We're not going to go into that. Storm published a statement. This was kind of interesting to me. Storm published a statement that their testing has shown many factors, including differences in surface finish, can cause variances in durometer readings. Does this matter? So this is why it's kind of interesting, because this is kind of a very direct answer, right? The manual states, it is the manufacturer's responsibility to ensure that all USBC approved balls comply with all specifications at the time of manufacture. The manual also states that spot checking balls will be purchased from distribution. So distribution is the place, not where you buy the balls from, right? You buy your bowling balls from pro shops, but pro shops buy their balls from distributors, and that's where these balls are going to come from. They're actually going to come from the distributors' warehouses. Manufacturers know balls will be tested out of the box. The manufacturer is solely responsible for the surface finishing process and any influence surface finishing may have on a specification measurement. If a manufacturer believes its finishing process will cause variation in specification measurement, then it's the manufacturer's responsibility to account for the variance. So what they're saying is that may be true, what Storm said, but it's still their responsibility. Then they say, even if surface finish alone caused the ball to measure out of specification per the manual, the ball is out of specification and subject to removal. So even if it doesn't, even if what they said is true, that the surface finish is the problem, if it's not in the specification, it's out. Period, point blank, end of story. Then, and this is where it gets kind of interesting to me, they actually start talking about some of the actual data, right? So they said they've got 6 balls here, right? They've got the Wolverine Altered Reality Phase 4 UFO Alert Trend 2 Electrify Solid. They also show you the hardness for each one of those balls. Now remember, the spec is 72, right? The spec is 72. So when you see all these balls, I'm sorry, the spec was 72. The spec is now 73. So there's a reason why I said that. This is why that's so important. So all of these balls, first off, are under 73, but the spec used to be 72. And that's what I think makes this whole situation kind of interesting. Because if you think about it for a second, if the spec would have stayed 72, which it's been changed for more than 2 years, manufacturers knew that, they were told it was going to change ahead of time. So there's no real excuse here for that for them not to conform to that. But nonetheless, if the spec still was 72, 3 of the 6 balls would have been legal and the Wolverine would have been really, really close, right? Because it was only 71.8. But the spec is 73. So that creates this potential for there to be a problem. Now, what's interesting is if you also go to the manufacturer's website and start looking at the hardness data that they publish on their website, they actually say, in a lot of these bowling balls, Dustin, 73 to 75.
Yeah. You want me to go ahead and pull that up real quick?
Yeah, let's go pull up. Just pull up any ball. It doesn't really matter what the ball is, but that matters because the manufacturer is essentially saying, "Hey, we make balls that are at this new limit." So he's going to pull up. It doesn't matter what ball. Just pull up any of the balls. We'll be able to see that. UFO alert, and you scroll down, and we'll be able to see because it will say what the hardness is on that ball. Oh.
73 to 75.
So they're telling you 2 things here, right? First off, they're telling you that they have a range, and that range can vary, right? It can vary 2 points. They are also telling you that the lower limit of their range is the spec.
Correct.
I mean, that should be a red flag.
Yeah.
That should be a red flag. You probably want to be above the spec because if you're at the spec, then you have a chance for bowling balls to fall below the spec, which that's happened before. Yeah. That happened with Motive actually. So, that's not a good position to be in. And I'm not by any means saying that Storm intentionally made these bowling balls soft. I don't know that they did that, But I think that making bowling balls and publishing bowling balls at a spec, that's pretty dangerous. Like that's just a dangerous thing to do. And obviously, unfortunately, we're getting to see the impact of that decision. And USBC says, no, your bowling balls are below those numbers, right? You guys said, 73 to 75. We're getting these balls as low as 71.1 and as high as 72.7. So that right there kind of creates a little bit of an issue. And then obviously you can see right here, we've actually posted all of what those manufacturer durometer numbers were. And these are from the manufacturer. But once again, 4 of those 6 balls are at the spec number from durometer. And we all know that there is some variation in the durometers, right? That's part of the process. We all know there's variations in how you check the bowling balls. That's part of the process too. But everybody's aware of that. That isn't brand new. That isn't anything that's new. Everybody was aware of that before we got into this situation. So being into this situation doesn't make that necessarily not count. Like that was part of the deal when everybody signed up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing that I took away from, reading all the interactions, I applaud USBC for stepping up and, they're doing their job. They're regulating the play field and, if something's wrong, they're fixing it. So I applaud them for taking action for balls that unfortunately are out of spec. I can imagine Storm is going to be working hard to change some formulations, whatever that might be in their covers to help with the softness. But you've had experience with items like this, and kind of we talked about it in our last video. We'll link that at the top of the screen here. What are some of the things that like a chemist would go through to figure that out, but still try to keep the performance of a bowling ball?
So, I mean, basically it's almost like making a cake, right? Making a bowling ball is like making a cake, a cover stock. And what I mean by that is you've got, 4 or 5 different ingredients. You basically mix them all together and then you let it cook. And it cooks it cures on its own. And by curing, that allows the bowling ball to get a performance. It also directly ties to hardness. So in my experience, the bowling balls that tend to be softer in general tend to have more performance. And you can kind of imagine that too. Like when you think of like a polyester ball that's like 85 or an 88 hardness doesn't perform nearly as much as a reactive ball that's a 75 or a 73 or whatever. So that's kind of the best way to look at it. I think there's an uphill battle for sure to be able to keep the performance of these balls and change the formulation. I mean, do I think Storm will be able to figure it out? Well, I sure hope so, because I sure like throwing some of their bowling balls. So I sure hope they get it figured out. And we'll have to wait and see when it's all said and done. I do feel bad for Storm too. This is a very unfortunate situation for them. I really applaud what they're doing to try to rectify the situation with their consumers. I think what they're doing is admirable. I think people should recognize that and should respect that, right? Because they didn't have to do what they're doing. And they're trying to affect all of the chain, everything from a consumer to the pro shop to distribution, just the whole chain in general. So they're trying to have a positive impact out of this very, very negative and unfortunate situation. What is also interesting, let's go back to the document because that's what we're here to talk about. What else is very interesting to me that I saw was that you look at the projected out of spec information and you get to those last 2 bottom balls, Trend 2 and Electrify Solid. Those bowling balls were, 72.5, 72.7. But what's most interesting to me is when it says projected out of spec, it says NA- testing paused after agreement. What that tells me is that they decided to quit looking at bowling balls. It doesn't mean that there weren't any more out there, right? It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that we looked at all the balls and here's all the balls and all the balls the rest of them are legal. It doesn't say that. It just says after going through this process and talking to Storm, we've agreed that we're done looking.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing that I think people need to recognize is that, people say, well, now this ball will be next and that ball will be next. And because this player won on tour, that's going to be bad. That's not true. It flat out says that they're done looking.
Yeah.
So with this particular situation, it's over. They're not going to come back and ban additional bowling balls. So please remember that. Also, the bowling balls that are on this list, they're not banned, right? They're just excluded from national events. So any of the USBC ran events, any of the bigger events, you just aren't allowed to use them. You can still use it in league. You can still use it at most tournaments, unless the tournament and or league adopts a rule to officially get rid of those balls. You can still use these bowling balls in all your other competitions.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think in just talking about that a little bit more, with these balls being banned from USBC events only. They're still good unless otherwise stated by a tournament official or a league official. These balls are still good to use in league or a tournament. So personally, if I'm not bowling open championships, I'm probably going to keep. If I really like a ball, I'm probably going to keep it. What's your stance on that? Like, if you had a ball that you really liked and you're not bowling open championships or any USBC events, are you keeping a ball or are you sending it back?
So for me personally, I'm probably going to send it back, but I'm doing that because I know there's enough bowling balls that exist in the market that I can get to where I need to get to without the hassle, without the headache. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I can understand completely though why somebody who doesn't have the access to the product would be like, yo, I want to keep this ball, or I like this ball, or I shot my first 300 with this ball. There's lots of reasons to be able to keep them. And I think at the end of the day, as long as the bowling balls aren't officially banned, everywhere, it's fine, right? Like, it's okay to use. And that's what they're saying. What else is interesting is that little couple paragraphs below the data where it says USBC testing does confirm that removing surface finish polish by sanding will cause the balls to measure harder. So they are agreeing with Storm that if you take off the polish, the ball does measure harder. However, even if the manual called for sanding bowling balls for hardness testing, which it doesn't, the hardness measurement does not increase enough to bring all the samples to within the specification. So what they're saying is that even if we sanded the bowling balls and retested them, they're going to be harder, but not in spec. USBC stands behind its data and determination. USBC reiterates the statement approved by Storm on March 29th, 2022, which USBC identified models having a percentage of balls below the USBC minimum 73D hardness specification. So basically what they're saying is that Storm, agreed to this. Storm said that this is what happened. And, from our standpoint, our being USBC, this is kind of the information that kind of helped us to determine where we were with that. And I think that's kind of an important thing here. They go into some more things. I don't know that we really need to go into that, talking about, what was going on at nationals and, why weren't people allowed to view the testing? And just a couple of other just things that went rampant on Facebook and social media about what are they doing, trying to make them more of a villain than anything else. And this is kind of them looking to kind of clear the air on some of those items. I think it's important that they did that because a lot of people, including us, had questions about it. So I think doing this is a step in the right direction. I think also ultimately, Storm is doing the best they can too with the situation. I'm a big fan of Storm. I'm a big fan of all the ball manufacturers. I think it's incredibly hard to make a bowling ball. And people don't really know or understand that, but it really, really is hard to make a round object, believe it or not. And I think, for Storm to be able to be put in this situation and to react as quickly as they did kind of says something about, what they are as a company. So I think that's good that they're reacting to this situation and trying to get people replacements when needed and information and education as well as when needed. So definitely kudos to them and kudos to USBC for putting out the document. Dustin, what else do you want to talk about on this document, man?
I think we covered all of the good points. I think the point that I was happy to see was the data. Data doesn't lie. So I think them showing the data was, at least from my end, and I know you were happy to see it, a good thing just to have it in that article. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on in the article itself?
Yeah, one more thing. They also talk about house shot versus sport shot. And what they say about 97% of all USBC certified leagues are contested on house conditions that typically provide bowlers with more area to hit the pocket. In these cases, the impact of the hardest specification is less significant. Now, what's interesting about that is we actually showed that. Like, we actually have a video. Dustin can put a link into the video where we actually literally showed bowling on a flat pattern what happens, like why these soft bowling balls can be advantageous. But as USBC is saying, dude, you're talking about 3% of the patterns that people bowl on where that becomes advantageous. And in the majority of the other cases, it's not like that. So they talk about where you can go if you want to keep your ball or where you can go if you want to get your bowling ball replaced. They also address a few other little small things regarding, like, if you shoot an honor score, does it still count? Well, of course it does, because the ball is approved. The ball is not banned. Now, that's not the case with Spectre, right? Spectre was completely banned and you can't use that ball, period. But these other bowling balls are not banned. They're just excluded. So keep that in mind. We see a lot of misinformation on social media, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to make this video, is to kind of give you some of the facts. And I understand most people either don't want to read the document or don't understand the document. So that's kind of what we were here to do. Just kind of give you a little education on what the document said. Kind of it was a TLDR, too long didn't read. Yeah, you ever heard that?
No.
Yeah, you never heard that? Yeah, that's a real thing. Anyway,
no matter how long it is, I just don't read it.
Exactly. Well, we read it multiple times, and we want to kind of give you the shorthand version of that. And we appreciate you guys joining us. Justin, you got anything else to
add? Not necessarily in regards to the article. If you're interested in reading the article, we'll link it down in the description. So if you're interested in reading it, and we also will link a couple of the videos that we talked about in the description as well. But yeah, we appreciate everybody tuning in. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Over 1,000 educational videos on the channel, and growing every single day. So we appreciate your subscription. Leave us a comment what you thought of the video and what you think of the announcement itself. You want to add anything else?
We're good.
We're good? All right. So until next time, he's Ron. I'm Dustin. And we'll talk to you all very soon.